A woman in 1956 could walk into a J.C. Penney on a Saturday afternoon, spend $8 on a blue cotton shirtwaist dress with pearl buttons and a matching belt, and that dress would carry her through every single morning of her life for the next 3 years. She would iron it before dawn. She would wear it to peel apples, to take the milk bottles off the porch, to wave her children off to school. She would wash it by hand, hang it on the line, press it again, and never once think of it as elegant. It was just her dress, the one she reached for first, the one that smelled like starch and ivory soap and the particular warmth of a kitchen where someone had already started the coffee. That dress is gone, not because cotton went extinct, not because buttons stopped working. That dress is gone because the entire world that made it necessary, that made it beautiful, that made a woman press a house dress before scrubbing a bathtub, that world packed up and left sometime around 1973, and nobody held a funeral for it. I spent 3 weeks pulling this one together. I read Jonathan Walford's 1950s American Fashion, which follows the American garment industry from 7th Avenue to the beaches of California. I dug through Sears and Montgomery Ward catalogs from 54 through 59. I went through old McCall's pattern books. And what struck me wasn't the dresses themselves. It was what those dresses knew. They knew what hour it was. They knew what room you were in. They knew whether you were standing in your own kitchen or sitting in someone else's. Every dress in an American woman's closet in the 50s had a specific assignment, a specific hour, a specific social function. And when those hours disappeared, when those social functions evaporated, the dresses went with them, quietly, without anyone noticing until it was too late. Get this. The average middle-class American woman in 1955 owned between 14 and 20 dresses. Not for vanity, for logistics. There was a dress for Monday morning and a different dress for Sunday morning, and a completely different dress for Wednesday afternoon. And if you mixed them up, the neighbors would know. That is not a wardrobe. That is a social calendar made of fabric. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to walk through that closet, dress by dress, hour by hour. And we are going to understand not just what disappeared, but why it had to disappear, and what we accidentally threw away along with it. But first, we need to understand the closet itself, because that closet did not appear out of nowhere. In 1947, a French designer named Christian Dior showed a collection in Paris that changed the shape of every woman's body in the Western world. He called it the Corolle line. The fashion press called it the new look. Fitted bodice, cinched waist, full skirt that used up to 20 yards of fabric in a single dress. This in a Europe still rationing bread. Women in Paris were chased in the streets for wearing it. Critics called it obscene, wasteful, a slap in the face to every family still counting coupons. And American women loved it. By 1950, the new look had crossed the Atlantic and settled into every department store from Marshall Field's in Chicago to Hudson's in Detroit to Bonwit Teller on Fifth Avenue. But here is the part that gets overlooked. American manufacturers did not copy Dior. They translated him. They took that hourglass silhouette and made it affordable. They made it in cotton instead of silk. They made it washable. They sold it through the Sears catalog for $4.98. They turned haute couture into a house dress, and they did it in about 18 months. That speed, that translation from Paris runway to Midwestern kitchen, that was the engine that built the 1950s closet. Every dress we are about to talk about descends from that moment. From Dior's 20 yards of fabric, filtered through American pragmatism, until it became a $5 cotton dress with a button front and a belt that tied in the back. All right, back to it. Let us start where every morning started, the house dress. It had no name, really. Women just called it my house dress. the way you might say my coat or my shoes. Not a fashion statement, a fact. The house dress was usually made of soft cotton, sometimes a polished broadcloth, printed with small flowers or a gingham check. Gingham, by the way, exploded in 1950 after it showed up in ready-to-wear catalogs. Before 50, it was a picnic tablecloth fabric. After 50, it was on every woman's back before 8 in the morning. The design was almost always a shirtwaist. Button front, fitted waist, a skirt that moved when she did, short sleeves, a small collar she had ironed the night before. And here is the detail that floors people today. She ironed this dress before putting it on, to do dishes, to scrub the bathtub, to hang laundry on the line. Because in 1955, no American woman left her bedroom in something that was not pressed. Donna Reed wore one on television. Lucille Ball wore one on I Love Lucy. But the real women, the ones without cameras and laugh tracks, they wore them harder and longer, and never once thought of themselves as icons. They were just getting dressed, the way their mothers had, the way their grandmothers had. The house dress was not a choice. It was the floor, the minimum standard of daily self-respect. We have replaced it with sweatpants and oversized t-shirts, and that is fine, truly. But somewhere in that swap, we also traded a small, private ritual. The act of getting dressed for yourself, before the world asked anything of you, before the first phone call, before the first errand. Just you, a pressed dress, and a kitchen that smelled like coffee. That dress cost about $4 to $7 at Sears in 1955. Adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $40 to $65 today. About the same as a decent pair of yoga pants. Except the yoga pants do not require an ironing board, and nobody mistakes them for dignity. Now, if the house dress was Monday through Saturday, the Sunday dress was something else entirely. By Saturday night, it was already out, hanging on the closet door. Brushed clean, the hem checked for loose threads. The hat sat on the bed in its round box. The white gloves rested on the dresser, folded one inside the other. The pearl earrings, sometimes real, more often costume from Kresge's Five and Dime, laid out beside the hairbrush. Sunday morning, the whole house slowed down for that one dress. It was usually navy or soft gray in the fall, pale blue or rose pink in the spring. The fabric was a heavier crepe or a fine wool, nothing that wrinkled. There was a fitted bodice, three-quarter sleeves, a belted waist, and a skirt that fell just below the knee. Modesty was not even the right word. It was geometry. The geometry of respect. You wore this dress to church, and only to church. You did not wear it to the grocery store afterward. When you came home, you carefully unbuttoned it, slipped on a robe over your slip, and hung it back on its padded hanger to rest for another week. In small towns from Asheville to Lincoln to Birmingham, every Sunday morning looked the same. Wooden pews, a choir warming up, the quiet rustle of women settling into their seats, their Sunday dresses moving around them like a held breath. You see the problem, right? The dress did not vanish because fashion changed. The dress vanished because Sunday changed. Because church attendance in America dropped from roughly 75% of the population in 1955 to under 30% by 2020, according to Gallup. That is not a fashion story. That is a sociological earthquake, and the Sunday dress was its first quiet casualty. Now here is one almost nobody remembers. The afternoon dress. It lived in a very specific slot in the closet, right between the house dress and the church dress. It was the dress a woman changed into around 2 in the afternoon, after the morning work was done but before the evening began. She changed out of her house dress, refreshed her lipstick, usually a tangy or a coty, pinned her hair, slipped on stockings if she was going more than 2 doors down, picked up her handbag, and walked over to Mrs. Henderson's house with a tin of coffee cake. The afternoon dress was printed. Small florals, polka dots, gentle plaids, cotton or light rayon, a softly gathered skirt, a sweet collar. Nothing dramatic, just nice. Just the kind of dress you would feel pleased to be seen in if Mrs. Henderson opened her front door wearing her own afternoon dress. And that reciprocity was the whole point. The dress was a signal. It said, "I have time for you this afternoon. I have set aside this hour. I have changed my clothes for it." The visit itself was never long. 45 minutes, maybe an hour. She would bring something small. She would help with the dishes when the tea was finished. She would never stay long enough to be a burden. That whole ritual, the dress, the visit, the 45 minutes at someone's kitchen table, was the soft architecture that held neighborhoods together. It was not organized. It was not scheduled through an app. It was just a Wednesday. And the Wednesday disappeared, and with it the dress, and with it a kind of community that no text message has ever managed to replace. All right, let us move to something sharper. The Bridge Club dress. In nearly every middle-class American town in the 50s, there was a women's bridge club. It met on a Tuesday or Thursday afternoon and rotated between 4 or 5 houses. Bridge was serious. Cards were taken seriously. Conversation was taken seriously. Hosting was taken seriously. And there was a dress for it. The bridge dress was sharper than the afternoon dress, but softer than the church dress, more tailored. Sometimes a sheath silhouette, sometimes a pencil skirt with a fitted top. The colors were sophisticated: charcoal, dove gray, deep teal, oxblood. Nothing too flowery, because a bridge afternoon was not a garden party. The hostess would set out finger sandwiches with the crusts cut off, lemon squares from a recipe in McCall's, coffee in her best cups. The women would arrive with their handbags and their card cases, and they would compliment the dress and the curtains and the new wallpaper in the hallway in that careful way that meant they noticed everything and judged almost nothing out loud. There is a book I found incredibly useful for understanding this world. Christina Harris wrote Vintage Fashions for Women, the 1950s and 60s. It has over 500 color photographs of authentic day and evening clothes and accessories. And what comes through is not the fashion. It is the precision. The way every garment knew its place in the social calendar. The bridge dress was not about looking good. It was about saying, without words, "I take this afternoon seriously. I respect your home. I prepared." That whole world has mostly vanished. Bridge clubs still exist in pockets, but the dress is gone. And with it, something I keep coming back to. The sweetness of American women dressing up just for each other. Not for a husband, not for a photograph. Just for a circle of other women around a wooden card table on an ordinary afternoon. Now, if there was one dress that perfectly captured how a woman could move through her own home like she was starring in her own private film, it was the hostess gown. The hostess gown was long, floor-skimming, almost a costume, except women wore it casually in their own living rooms on Friday and Saturday evenings while serving cocktails. A hostess gown might be velvet in winter, silk shantung in summer, quilted satin in the cooler months. It often had a high neck or a soft cowl, 3/4 sleeves, and a long skirt that fell straight to the floor. Now, I should be honest here. I assumed when I started researching this that the hostess gown was some high society affectation. Rich women in Manhattan floating around penthouse apartments. I was wrong. The Sears catalog sold them. Montgomery Ward had a section for them. Lucille Ball wore a version on I Love Lucy paired with capri pants. And that combination, the long overdress with slim pants underneath, basically became the casual entertaining uniform for middle-class women from coast to coast. The New York Times once described it as a cross between an evening formal and a bathrobe. And honestly, that is perfect. It was glamour you could spill a martini on. Picture a woman in 1957 in a small ranch house outside Tulsa. She is lighting a candle on her dining room table while wearing a deep green hostess gown with gold piping at the wrists. The phonograph is playing something soft. Her husband is mixing whiskey sours at a bar cart. The ice clinks. The doorbell rings. She walks toward the door slowly, gracefully, in a dress she only wears in her own home, only on evenings like this one. That dress said something very specific. It said, "Tonight is something, even at home, even on an ordinary Friday." The idea of changing into a long gown to entertain in your own dining room would feel theatrical today. But those women did not think of it as theatrical. They thought of it as the natural shape of an evening when an evening still mattered. We do not have an equivalent, and I am not sure we want one. But I am sure we lost something when we stopped marking the difference between an ordinary night and a night that deserved its own dress. Now let us step outside. Late spring, the lilacs are blooming, the air smells like cut grass and lemonade, and there is a dress designed for one thing only: standing on a lawn. The garden party dress was almost impossibly feminine. Pale yellow, soft mint, dusty rose, sky blue. Fabrics like organdy, dotted Swiss, fine cotton voile. A full skirt held out by a stiff petticoat, a fitted bodice with a sweetheart neckline or a Peter Pan collar. Cap sleeves, a wide-brimmed straw hat, white gloves that ended just below the elbow, a small handbag in white wicker. Women wore this dress to a wedding luncheon in someone's backyard, a Mother's Day brunch on the church lawn, a confirmation party, the kind of afternoon where folding chairs were set up under elm trees and someone played the piano through the open dining room window. The dress was meant to look slightly impractical, and that was the whole point. It said, "Today is special enough that practicality does not matter. Today we have set the world aside for a few hours." Your dress can rustle when you walk and brush against the grass and pick up a faint scent of cut roses, and that is exactly enough. 20 yards of organdy. That is how much fabric went into some of those full skirts with petticoats underneath. 20 yards, enough to stretch from home plate to first base on a Little League diamond. For a dress you wore to stand on a lawn for 3 hours on a Saturday in May. We do not dress for grass anymore. We do not dress for an afternoon. And the slow, ritualized gatherings that gave the dress its meaning have been replaced by backyard barbecues where the dress code is whatever. The garden party dress has faded from American life, along with the kind of afternoon it was made for. And those afternoons, I'm starting to think, are the real loss. All right, let us move indoors and turn the lights down. The cocktail hour. In 1948, Christian Dior did something clever. He took the dress women were already wearing to evening gatherings and gave it a name: the cocktail dress. Suddenly, department stores could advertise an entire category, and by the early 50s, cocktail hour was an American institution. It ran from about 5 in the evening to 7, when the men came home from work and the world allowed itself one small, glittering pause before dinner. The cocktail dress was the uniform of that hour, black or wine red or deep navy, never pastel, never floral. Fitted waist, a slim or slightly flared skirt ending at the knee, 3/4 sleeves, always pearls, always heels, a small clutch handbag, a spritz of Chanel No. 5 or Coty from a glass bottle on the dresser. A woman might wear it to a neighbor's small gathering, a company dinner, a hotel bar before the theater, her own living room when one couple was coming over and she wanted the evening to feel slightly elevated. The cocktail dress was not about going out. It was about a specific 2-hour window when the world became briefly soft and lit and a little glamorous in the middle of an ordinary week. There was an understanding inside that hour. The drinks were small. The conversation was quieter. The lipstick was reapplied carefully, and the dress made all of it possible. Here's the thing that gets me. The cocktail dress still technically exists. You can buy one at Nordstrom right now. But the cocktail hour is gone. Without the hour, the dress has lost its gravity, its ceremony, its specific 5 o'clock magic that turned an ordinary Tuesday into something briefly, gently special. You can still buy the costume. You just cannot buy the play it was written for. Now, if the cocktail dress was for the early evening, the supper club dress was for the late one. The dress a woman put on when her husband took her somewhere with low lights and a band playing standards, and the world became briefly cinematic. In the 50s, almost every American city had a supper club. The Stork Club in New York, the Brown Derby in Los Angeles, the Pump Room in Chicago, where celebrities fought for the coveted booth number 1. But also smaller versions. Local supper clubs in Wichita, in Pittsburgh, in Memphis, in Des Moines, where ordinary couples went on an anniversary or a birthday, or just because it was Saturday and they felt like putting on good clothes and hearing a saxophone. The Stork Club, by the way, was run by Sherman Billingsley, an ex-bootlegger from Enid, Oklahoma, who turned a speakeasy into the most exclusive nightclub in America. The Kennedys went, the Roosevelts went, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor went. And then, in the 50s, Billingsley refused to serve Josephine Baker because she was black, and the whole thing started its slow collapse. The club closed in 1965. They demolished the building the following year. An entire era of American nightlife reduced to a parking lot. But the dress that women wore to those places, that dress outlasted the buildings by decades. It lived in cedar chests long after the last band stopped playing. The supper club dress was something a woman thought about for days. Silk or chiffon or taffeta, a beaded bodice or embroidery at the neckline, colors richer than the cocktail dress, emerald green, deep ruby, midnight blue. Sometimes long gloves, opera length, slipped on in the car before walking into the restaurant. She would put the dress on at home, slowly, in front of the mirror, with the lipstick going on last. She would dab perfume behind her ears, on her wrists, at the hollow of her throat, the way her mother had taught her. That whole way of going out has almost completely vanished. The lights are not low anymore. The band has been replaced by a Bluetooth speaker, and the dress that used to make a whole evening feel like a scene from a film is folded in someone's grandmother's cedar chest, waiting for someone to open the lid and wonder what kind of night required something this beautiful. Let us speed up a bit, because we have ground to cover, and I promised you I would not keep you here all day. The Easter dress. This one had a brightness all its own. You could feel Easter coming weeks before it arrived. The store windows at J.C. Penney and Lord & Taylor would fill with pale dresses in soft pastels, buttercup yellow, robin's egg blue, lilac, baby pink. Getting a new outfit for Easter was nearly universal in 50s America. It symbolized renewal, resurrection, a fresh start. The Easter corsage was a whole tradition on its own. A husband or father would buy a corsage and pin it on his wife's or mother's dress before church. When was the last time you saw that happen? Easter morning, the whole family gathered before the camera on the front lawn. Father in his Sunday suit, mother in her new pastel dress. The photograph that someone took that morning would end up in a small album, eventually pressed into a cardboard box, eventually inherited by a daughter, eventually opened on a quiet afternoon, years later, by someone who barely remembers the morning, but can still feel the starch in the collar and the spring breeze across the lawn. The Easter dress was never just a dress. It was the moment the family entered the spring together. Most American families today do not have an Easter dress. The ritual of buying it, choosing it, wearing it, being photographed in it has faded from most homes, and with it, a small thread of family memory that lived inside soft pastel cotton and was passed from mother to daughter every single spring. The travel dress. Almost nobody remembers this one. In the 50s, when women traveled by train or Greyhound bus or the new, slightly terrifying airplanes, they dressed for the trip. A woman did not show up at Union Station in casual clothes. She wore a travel suit, a slim sheath dress with a coordinating jacket, wool gabardine in cooler months, fine cotton or linen blend in summer, gray, camel, navy, dove, small leather gloves, a pillbox hat, a brooch on the lapel. The whole look was engineered to survive a full day in a humid train car, a crowded waiting room, and a hotel lobby at the end of the line without ever looking rumpled. The invention of synthetic fabrics like rayon and nylon in the late 40s actually made this possible. Wrinkle-resistant fabrics that could survive 12 hours in a coach seat and still look pressed when you stepped onto the platform. She would pack her suitcase the night before, lay the travel suit out on a chair. In the morning, before the sun was up, she would dress by lamplight while the house slept. That small ritual was its own form of joy. The trip did not begin at the station. It began at the dressing table. We fly in flip-flops now. There was a recent debate about whether airlines should bring back dress codes. I do not think they should. But I do think we lost something when the act of going somewhere stopped requiring the act of preparing yourself for going somewhere. When travel became a transaction instead of an occasion. Here is one that carries more weight than you might expect. The mourning dress. Every American woman in the 50s knew where to find it in her closet. Plain black, long sleeves, high neckline, a skirt to below the knee. No print, no ornament. Sometimes a small black brooch, never a sparkle. This one reaches back further than the 50s, all the way back to the Victorian era, when mourning customs were codified into strict multi-stage rituals. A widow was expected to mourn in black for 2.5 years. Deep mourning gave way to ordinary mourning, then light mourning. Gradually, carefully, dark purples and grays were introduced as the months passed. A whole language of grief written in fabric that everyone in the community could read without a word being spoken. By the 1950s, the rules had softened, but the instinct survived. A woman wore black for the immediate days after a death, dark gray or navy for the weeks that followed. The mourning dress said something before anyone said hello at the funeral. It said, "I am inside something. Be gentle with me today." It gave the woman a kind of protection, a visible signal that everyone around her could understand. We have lost that. We wear regular clothes to funerals now, sometimes whatever is clean. We go back to work the next day. We walk through grocery stores in the middle of grief, looking exactly like everyone else. The mourning dress is gone, and with it, a small mercy. A way of letting the world know without saying a word that something inside you was broken and that you needed time. I found myself thinking about that one longer than any other dress on this list. There is something brutal about grieving in a world that gives you no visible armor for it. Let us lighten things up. The patio dress. If you grew up in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, parts of Texas, you know exactly what this is. Long sweeping skirt, 3 or 4 tiers of gathered fabric, decorated with rickrack trim or silver braid, paired with a simple matching blouse. Turquoise, deep red, sun yellow, desert orange. Now, here is the part that has gotten complicated. The original name for this dress was the squaw dress. It drew directly from Mexican and Native American textile traditions, Navajo weaving, the broomstick skirt, where fabric was pleated by wrapping it around a broomstick to set the creases. By the mid-50s, it had gone from a regional Southwestern style to a nationwide craze. But the name and the cultural borrowing are genuinely problematic, and most fashion historians now use the term patio dress or fiesta dress instead. I'm going to respect that. The dress itself, whatever you call it, captured something real about American summer in the 50s. A woman in Pasadena or Albuquerque or Phoenix would wear it to a backyard barbecue, a Saturday cookout by the pool, a casual evening with neighbors when the air was warm and the sun was going down. Some versions had small silver bells stitched into the hem that chimed softly when she walked across the patio. That dress is almost completely gone. The summers it lived inside are gone too, replaced by air-conditioned rooms and phones held close to faces and quicker, shorter gatherings. The patio dress remembers a world that knew how to stop, sit on a porch, let an evening unfold without checking anything. The maternity dress. This one surprises people. In the 50s, there was a whole category of dress designed to make a pregnant woman feel beautiful, not invisible. Loose-fitting, modest, made in soft fabrics, cotton, light rayon, gentle wool blends, a yoke at the chest, a softly gathered front, a small bow or button detail at the neckline. The colors were pastel or muted, pale pink, soft blue, mint green. The Sears and Montgomery Ward catalogs had entire sections devoted to them. A woman in 1956, in a small house outside Louisville, would buy 2 or 3 maternity dresses early in her pregnancy and wear them on rotation for months. She would take them in at the beginning, let them out in the middle, wash them by hand, press them on the ironing board on Sunday afternoons. She would wear them to the doctor, to church, to bridge club, where the other women would smile knowingly. The dress was meant to celebrate the round, soft fact of her body, not hide it, not minimize it, not turn it into a bump that needed managing. We have replaced the maternity dress with stretchy fabrics and tight silhouettes, and that is fine. But the older way had its own quiet grace, and the women who wore those dresses remember exactly how they felt, even decades later. The graduation dress. White, sometimes ivory. Organdy or eyelet cotton or dotted Swiss. Full skirt held out by layers of crinoline. Modest bodice, puffed sleeves, a satin sash at the waist. The mother and daughter would choose the fabric together at the local store, or order a Butterick or McCall's pattern. Sometimes a grandmother sewed it. The dress would hang on the closet door for days before the ceremony, while the daughter passed it nervously every morning. On the day, the daughter stepped into it slowly. The mother helped with the back buttons, the sash, the details. There would be a private moment in front of the bedroom mirror, mother and daughter looking at the same reflection, both suddenly aware that something was ending and something was beginning. And the white dress somehow held both at once. Caps and gowns cover everything now. Store-bought dresses have replaced the hand-sewn ones. But the women who wore those white organdy dresses remember exactly how their mothers' hands felt, fastening that last small button at the back of their neck. And the last one, the downtown dress. This is the one that might sting the most, because it is tied to a whole world that is truly, irreversibly gone. In the 50s, going downtown was an event. Women did not pop into a store. They went into the city. They took the bus or drove the family car and walked into the great department stores. Marshall Field's in Chicago, with its 73 acres of floor space and its Tiffany glass ceiling. Hudson's in Detroit, the tallest department store in the world by 1961, with 706 fitting rooms, 68 elevators, and 5 restaurants inside a single building. Bonwit Teller on Fifth Avenue in New York, Filene's in Boston, Bullock's in Los Angeles. They were cathedrals, marble floors, glass counters, sales clerks in white gloves who knew your name. The downtown dress was made for those marble floors, a tailored sheath with a matching jacket, or a fitted dress with a slim belt and 3/4 sleeves, light wool or fine gabardine, ivory, dove gray, camel, navy, a hat, gloves, a handbag held just so. Hudson's closed its downtown flagship in 1983. Marshall Field's became Macy's in 2006. Bonwit Teller shut down in 1990. One by one, the cathedrals fell. And the dress that was made for walking their marble floors, the dress that said, "I am going into the city today, and I have dressed for the occasion," that dress had nowhere left to go. You know what gets me? It is not the dresses. The dresses are just fabric, cotton and wool and rayon and a few pearl buttons. What gets me is what the dresses knew. They knew what time it was. They knew what room you were in. They knew whether you were hosting or visiting, grieving or celebrating, going downtown or staying home. They were a language. A fluent, daily, universal language that every woman in America spoke without ever being taught, because she learned it the way she learned to walk, by watching her mother do it first. 14 dresses, 14 hours of the day. 14 social rituals that organized American life so thoroughly that nobody even thought of them as rituals. They were just life. And then, one by one, the rituals ended. The Sunday service, the afternoon visit, the bridge club, the cocktail hour, the supper club, the Easter photograph, the train to Chicago, the downtown department store. And when the rituals ended, the dresses lost their reason for existing. Not their beauty, their reason. I do not think we should go back. I think comfort is a legitimate form of self-respect, and I think forcing women into girdles and white gloves was never actually about dignity. It was about performance, about a very specific, very narrow idea of what a woman owed the world just by walking out her front door. But I also think we threw out some things we did not mean to. The afternoon visit, the slow ritual of getting dressed for Sunday, the small private prayer in front of the mirror before walking out the door, the mourning dress that told the world to be gentle with you, the 45 minutes at Mrs. Henderson's kitchen table that held a whole neighborhood together. Those were not about fabric. Those were about paying attention to each other, to the hours of the day, to the particular weight and shape of being alive on a Wednesday afternoon in 1956, when the world was smaller and slower, and every dress in your closet knew exactly where you were going and exactly who you were when you got there. Take care of yourselves.